Flashing lights pierced the darkness as Officer James Reeves pulled over yet another vehicle on a lonely stretch of highway. It was a routine traffic stop, or so he thought. Little did he know, this encounter would soon spiral into a national scandal that would rock law enforcement to its core. License and registration, Reeves barked as he approached the driver's window. The man inside fumbled nervously with his wallet before producing the requested documents. Something about his demeanor set off alarm bells in the veteran cop's mind. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," Reeves commanded, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his holstered weapon. The driver complied, albeit reluctantly. As he emerged from the car, Reeves noticed his expensive suit seemed out of place for this rural backroad. "Were you headed tonight?" Reeves questioned, shining his flashlight directly in the man's face. The glare made it difficult to read his expression. "I'm on my way to meet some colleagues," the man replied evenly. "Is there a problem, officer?" Reeves ignored the question. "Mind if I search your vehicle?" He was already moving towards the car without waiting for a response. "Actually, I do mind," the driver asserted, stepping into Reeves' path. "I know my rights. You have no probable cause for a search." Reeves felt his temper flare. Who did this guy think he was? "Listen here," he growled, jabbing a finger into the man's chest. "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I can spot trouble a mile away, and you reek of it. Now step aside before I make you." What happened next would be replayed on news channels and social media for weeks to come. The driver reached into his jacket pocket, causing Reeves to draw his weapon in one fluid motion. "Hands where I can see them," he shouted. But instead of a weapon, the man produced a badge. "FBI," he stated calmly. "I'm Special Agent Marcus Williams. And you, Officer Reeves, are in a world of trouble." Reeves felt the blood drain from his face as realization dawned. This was no ordinary traffic stop. He just threatened an undercover federal agent. In the days that followed, the incident sparked a firestorm of controversy. Accusations of racial profiling and police misconduct flew as dashboard camera footage went viral. Officer Reeves claimed he was simply following protocol, while Agent Williams alleged he'd been targeted due to the color of his skin. As the story gained traction, it forced uncomfortable conversations about bias in law enforcement. Police supporters rallied behind Reeves, praising his years of service and arguing split-second decisions shouldn't be Monday morning quarterbacked. Civil rights activists, meanwhile, saw the incident as proof of systemic racism within the justice system. But this case wasn't as clear-cut as either side wanted to believe. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered layers of complexity that challenged everyone's preconceptions. The truth, it seemed, was far more nuanced than a simple tale of good versus evil. Agent Williams, it turned out, had a complicated history of his own. His undercover assignment that night was part of a larger operation targeting corruption within local police departments. Some whispered that he deliberately provoked Reeves, pushing buttons to elicit a reaction. And what of Officer Reeves himself? His personnel file painted a picture of a dedicated public servant with an unblemished record. Colleagues described him as by the book to a fault, sometimes lacking in empathy, but never explicitly racist. Yet his actions that night told a different story. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this incident was a powder keg igniting long-simmering tensions. It forced Americans to confront uncomfortable truths about race, power, and the thin blue line separating order from chaos. Experts weighed in from all angles. Psychologists explored the role of implicit bias in split-second decision-making. Legal scholars debated the limits of police authority and the rights of citizens. Activists on both sides of the political spectrum used the case to further their agendas. But lost in the whirlwind of talking heads and hot takes were the human beings at the center of it all. Officer Reeves and Agent Williams found their lives upended, their motivations dissected by strangers who'd never walked a day in their shoes. As public opinion swayed back and forth, one question remained at the heart of the controversy. In that crucial moment on a dark highway, what really drove Officer Reeves' actions? Was it racial animus, as some claimed? Or was it simply the hair-trigger instincts of a cop who'd seen too much? The answer, like so much in life, resisted easy categorization. It lay somewhere in the murky waters where fear, prejudice, and human fallibility collide. And as the nation grappled with these difficult questions, it became clear that the repercussions of this single traffic stop would echo far beyond the lives of the two men involved. In the weeks that followed, protests erupted in cities across the country. Police departments faced renewed scrutiny over their training and hiring practices. Politicians scrambled to propose reforms, each claiming to have the solution to a problem centuries in the making. But for those closest to the incident, the path forward was far less certain. Officer Reeves found himself suspended, his career and reputation hanging by a thread. Agent Williams grappled with the weight of being thrust into the spotlight, knowing his every word and action would be dissected for hidden meaning. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that this story was far from over. The truth behind that fateful encounter would prove more shocking and transformative than anyone could have imagined. And for those willing to look beyond the headlines and sound bites, it offered a rare opportunity to challenge long-held beliefs and see the world through fresh eyes. In the end, the tale of the racist cop and the undercover agent would force us all to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we built. It would remind us that human beings are complex creatures, capable of both great nobility and devastating flaws. And it would leave us with a fundamental question that cuts to the very heart of justice in America. When the dust settles and the truth comes to light, we have the courage to change. As the nation held its breath, waiting for the next development in the Reeves-Williams case, a team of investigators worked tirelessly behind the scenes. They pored over surveillance footage, interviewed witnesses, and dug deep into both men's backgrounds. Every new piece of evidence seemed to raise more questions than answers. One key figure emerged as a potential link between Officer Reeves and Agent Williams: Captain Sarah Martinez, a veteran of the local police force with a reputation for no-nonsense leadership. As it turned out, Martinez had crossed paths with both men in the past, though under very different circumstances. Years earlier, Martinez had served as Reeves' training officer when he first joined the force. She remembered him as eager to learn but sometimes overzealous in his approach to the job. James always wanted to be the hero, she recalled in a closed-door interview. Sometimes I worried he didn't fully grasp the weight of the badge. More recently, Martinez had worked alongside Agent Williams on a joint task force targeting drug trafficking in the area. Their collaboration had been brief but productive, with Williams impressing her with his sharp instincts and dedication to justice. Marcus struck me as the kind of agent who'd go to any lengths to get the job done, she noted. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a web of connections that extended far beyond that single traffic stop. It seemed that Reeves and Williams had been on a collision course long before their fateful encounter on that dark highway. Months prior to the incident, Reeves had been part of an internal affairs investigation into allegations of racial profiling within the department. Though he'd been cleared of wrongdoing, the experience had left him bitter and defensive. Colleagues noted a change in his demeanor, a hardening of his attitudes towards the community he'd sworn to protect. Williams, meanwhile, had been working undercover for nearly a year, slowly infiltrating a network of corrupt officers who were allegedly on the take from local drug cartels. His mission that night had been to meet with a potential informant, someone who claimed to have damning evidence against high-ranking officials in the police department. As these details came to light, public opinion began to shift. What had initially seemed like a clear-cut case of racial profiling now appeared far more complex. Some began to wonder if Reeves had been set up, made to look like a racist cop to further some larger agenda. Others questioned Williams' motives, suggesting he might have deliberately provoked the confrontation to expose systemic issues within law enforcement. Amidst the swirling theories and speculation, one thing became clear: this case was about much more than a single traffic stop gone wrong. It had the potential to blow the lid off years of corruption and cover-ups, reaching to the highest levels of local government. But as the investigation progressed, dangerous forces began to push back. Anonymous threats were made against key witnesses. Evidence mysteriously disappeared from police lockup. And both Reeves and Williams found themselves under intense scrutiny, their every past action and association picked apart for signs of impropriety. The pressure began to take its toll. Reeves, suspended from duty and facing possible criminal charges, retreated into isolation. His wife reported that he barely left the house, spending hours staring at the wall or rewatching footage of the incident, as if searching for some detail that would exonerate him. Williams, for his part, struggled with the sudden shift from undercover operative to public figure. He was torn between his duty to see the investigation through and his desire to protect the network of informants he cultivated over months of painstaking work. Each press conference and interview felt like walking a tightrope, knowing that one wrong word could jeopardize years of effort. As the weeks dragged on, new players entered the fray. Civil rights attorney Amelia Diaz took on Williams' case pro bono, vowing to expose what she called a pattern of systemic racism and abuse of power within the police department. Her impassioned speeches on the courthouse steps drew crowds of supporters and detractors alike. On the other side, police union representative Frank O'Malley became Reeves' most vocal defender. He argued tirelessly that Reeves was a scapegoat, sacrificed on the altar of political correctness. "We're asking our officers to make split-second decisions in life-or-death situations," he told reporters. "And then we crucify them for not being perfect." The case soon caught the attention of national media, with pundits and talking heads dissecting every new development. Some saw it as a turning point in the ongoing debate over police reform, while others dismissed it as a manufactured controversy designed to push a political agenda. Lost in the noise were the human beings at the center of it all. Reeves' teenage daughter faced bullying at school, taunted by classmates who called her father a racist. Williams' elderly parents were hounded by reporters seeking an exclusive interview, their quiet retirement shattered by the constant intrusion. As public interest in the case reached a fever pitch, a shocking new piece of evidence emerged. An anonymous source leaked audio recordings that appeared to implicate several high-ranking officials in a vast conspiracy of corruption and cover-ups. The recordings mentioned both Reeves and Williams by name, suggesting that their confrontation might have been orchestrated to distract from larger misdeeds. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Suddenly, everyone involved in the case was under suspicion. Who could be trusted when the very institutions meant to uphold justice seemed compromised? As investigators scrambled to verify the authenticity of the recordings, tensions in the city reached a boiling point. Protesters clashed with police in the streets, demanding accountability and transparency. Local businesses boarded up their windows, fearing riots. In the midst of the chaos, Reeves and Williams found themselves thrust together once again. This time, however, it wasn't as adversaries on opposite sides of the law. Instead, they were united by a common goal: uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. As unlikely allies, the suspended cop and the undercover agent began to piece together a puzzle far larger and more dangerous than either had imagined. They realized that their confrontation on that fateful night had been just one small part of a much bigger story. A story that, if fully revealed, had the potential to shake the foundations of power in their city and beyond. But powerful forces were aligning against them. As Reeves and Williams dug deeper, they found themselves targeted by shadowy figures determined to keep the truth buried. Warnings gave way to threats, and soon both men were fighting not just for their reputations, but for their lives. With the world watching and the stakes higher than ever, Reeves and Williams faced a crucial decision. Would they retreat to the safety of silence, allowing the system to grind on unchanged, or would they risk everything to expose the corruption at the heart of their community? As they stood at this crossroads, the true nature of justice and the price of pursuing it hung in the balance. The choices they made in the coming days would not only determine their own fates but potentially reshape the landscape of law enforcement for years to come. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of loyalty, courage, and the human capacity for change. And as the city held its breath, waiting to see how it would all unfold, one thing became abundantly clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The unlikely alliance between Reeves and Williams sent ripples through the community. Former colleagues eyed them with suspicion, unsure where their loyalties truly lay. But as they delved deeper into the web of corruption, they found unexpected allies in the most unlikely places. One such ally was Maria Hernandez, a rookie officer who joined the force with starry-eyed idealism. She'd looked up to Reeves as a mentor, but the scandal had shaken her faith. Now, she found herself torn between her loyalty to the department and her growing suspicion that something was deeply wrong. Late one night, Maria approached Reeves in a dimly lit parking garage. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I've seen things, heard things. I think you might be right about all this. But if I help you, I'm risking everything. My career, maybe even my life." Reeves placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it's scary, Maria, but sometimes doing the right thing means facing your fears. We need good cops like you if we're ever going to change things. As Maria began feeding them information from inside the department, Williams worked his own angles. He reached out to his network of informants, piecing together a complex puzzle of payoffs, blackmail, and cover-ups that reached the highest levels of city government. One name kept surfacing: Michael Donnelly, the charismatic mayor who'd swept into office on promises of reform and transparency. But behind his polished public image lurked darker truths. Whispers of kickbacks and backroom deals painted a picture of a man who'd do anything to maintain his grip on power. As Reeves and Williams closed in on the truth, the pushback intensified. Late one night, Williams returned home to find his apartment ransacked, a chilling message scrawled on the wall: "Back off or else." Reeves woke to find his car's brake lines cut, a near miss that left him shaken but more determined than ever. The investigation took an unexpected turn when they uncovered a connection to a local charity, the Bright Futures Foundation. On the surface, it appeared to be a noble organization dedicated to at-risk youth. But digging deeper revealed a sophisticated money laundering operation, funneling illicit funds through its programs. The foundation's director, Elena Vasquez, became a person of interest. A respected community leader with a heart-wrenching backstory of overcoming adversity, she seemed an unlikely suspect. But as Reeves and Williams pieced together the evidence, they realized appearances could be deceiving. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Martinez found herself caught in an impossible position. As more evidence of departmental corruption came to light, she faced mounting pressure to pick a side, her loyalty to the force warred with her sense of justice, leaving her sleepless and conflicted. One rainy afternoon, Martinez called Reeves to a clandestine meeting in a rundown diner on the outskirts of town. Her eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep as she slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "This is everything I have," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Names, dates, bank records. Use it wisely. And James, be careful. These people will stop at nothing to keep this quiet." As the net tightened around the conspirators, fault lines began to appear in their ranks. Paranoia set in, with each corrupt official wondering if they'd be the next to fall. This climate of fear and suspicion led to hasty decisions and careless mistakes, openings that Reeves and Williams were quick to exploit. But just as they seemed to be making headway, a new complication arose. Williams' FBI handlers, concerned about the widening scope of the investigation, ordered him to pull back. They feared the potential fallout if a federal agent was caught up in a local scandal of this magnitude. Williams found himself torn between his duty as an agent and his commitment to seeing justice done. In a heated exchange with his supervisor, he argued passionately for staying the course. "We can't back out now," he insisted. "This goes beyond just one city. If we can break this open, it could lead to reforms across the country." As the pressure mounted, cracks began to show in Reeves and Williams' partnership. The stress of constant danger, coupled with lingering mistrust from their initial encounter, led to heated arguments and second-guessing. They knew that a single misstep could unravel everything they'd worked for. Their investigation led them to a waterfront warehouse, supposedly abandoned but showing signs of recent activity. As they staked out the location, they observed a series of late-night meetings involving familiar faces from City Hall and the police department. Just as they were about to make their move, a black SUV with tinted windows peeled out of the warehouse lot. Acting on instinct, Reeves and Williams gave chase, their hearts pounding as they weaved through the city's empty streets. The pursuit ended at the private airstrip on the outskirts of town. As they watched from a distance, they saw a figure hurriedly boarding a small private jet. Even from afar, the man's distinctive gait was unmistakable. It was Mayor Donnelly himself. As the jet's engines roared to life, Reeves and Williams faced a split-second decision. Did they risk everything on a confrontation now, or let Donnelly flee and focus on unraveling the rest of the conspiracy? Their choice in that moment would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the city to its core. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, neither man could have predicted the shocking twists that lay ahead. Revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about justice, loyalty, and the thin blue line between right and wrong. With the mayor's jet poised on the runway and the weight of their investigation hanging in the balance, Reeves and Williams steeled themselves for what was to come. They knew that whatever happened next, there would be no turning back. The truth, with all its explosive consequences, was finally about to come to light. The jet's engines roared, drowning out the frantic beating of Reeves and Williams' hearts. In a split-second decision, they sprang into action. Reeves gunned the engine of their unmarked car, racing towards the runway with Williams radioing for backup. As they closed in, the jet began to move. The chase was on, their vehicle bumping and skidding across the uneven airfield. Williams leaned out the window, badge held high, shouting for the pilot to abort takeoff. But the jet kept accelerating. Just when it seemed the plane would lift off, Reeves made a daring move. He swerved in front of the aircraft, forcing the pilot to slam on the brakes. The jet's tires screeched against the tarmac, coming to a stop mere feet from their car. Heart pounding, Reeves leaped out, gun drawn. "Mayor Donnelly," he shouted over the whine of the engines. "Step out of the aircraft now." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the jet's door opened. But it wasn't Donnelly who emerged. Instead, they found themselves face to face with Elena Vasquez, the director of Bright Futures Foundation. The revelation sent shockwaves through their investigation. What was Vasquez doing on the mayor's private jet, and where was Donnelly? Before they could question her, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. But something was off. The vehicles that arrived weren't the backup Williams had called for. Instead, a group of unidentified men in tactical gear poured out, weapons trained on Reeves and Williams. "Drop your weapons," a gruff voice commanded. "You're interfering with a federal operation." Confusion reigned as Reeves and Williams found themselves caught in a standoff. Who were these men, and how did they fit into the larger conspiracy? As dawn broke over the airfield, the two investigators realized they'd stumbled into something far bigger and more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. The local corruption they'd been unraveling was just the tip of the iceberg. Across town, Captain Martinez received an urgent call. The raid on the warehouse had uncovered a treasure trove of incriminating documents, evidence that pointed to a vast network of corruption extending far beyond city limits. But as she rushed to secure the evidence, Martinez found herself ambushed. A black SUV forced her off the road, and masked men grabbed her before she could call for help. As they sped away, she caught a glimpse of a familiar face among her captors, Officer Frank O'Malley, Reeves' most vocal defender. Meanwhile, rookie officer Maria Hernandez was following a lead of her own. Her investigation had led her to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. As she crept through the darkened building, she overheard voices, one of which she recognized as Mayor Donnelly's. Peering around a corner, Maria's blood ran cold. There stood the mayor, deep in conversation with a group of men she'd never seen before. Their words sent chills down her spine. "The operation's been compromised," one man said. "We need to accelerate the timeline." Donnelly nodded grimly. "Do whatever it takes. We can't let this unravel now. There's too much at stake." Maria's mind raced. What operation? What timeline? She had to warn Reeves and Williams. But as she turned to leave, a floorboard creaked beneath her feet. The voices fell silent. Back at the airfield, the standoff continued. Reeves and Williams found themselves outgunned and outnumbered, with Elena Vasquez watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. Just when it seemed there was no way out, Williams' phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Trust no one. Evidence in safety deposit box 247. Password: Bright Futures." As Williams' mind reeled from this new information, a helicopter appeared on the horizon. It descended rapidly, kicking up a cloud of dust. When it landed, a figure stepped out, one that made both Reeves and Williams freeze in disbelief. It was Captain Sarah Martinez. But something was off. Her eyes were wild, her normally composed demeanor shattered. "It's all connected," she shouted over the roar of the helicopter. "The department, City Hall, the feds. It goes all the way to the top." Before anyone could react, shots rang out. Martinez crumpled to the ground as chows erupted around them. Reeves and Williams dove for cover, their minds struggling to process the rapidly unfolding events. In that moment of confusion and gunfire, Elena Vasquez slipped away, disappearing into the mayhem. The jet's engines roared to life once more, and this time there was no stopping its takeoff. As the dust settled, Reeves and Williams found themselves at the center of a crime scene, with more questions than answers. Martinez lay bleeding, her life hanging by a thread. The evidence they'd fought so hard to uncover was racing away into the sky, and somewhere in the city, Maria Hernandez was in grave danger, armed with knowledge that could blow the entire conspiracy wide open. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the airfield. Reeves and Williams exchanged a look of grim determination. They were in too deep to back out now. Whatever the cost, they had to see this through to the end. But as sirens wailed in the distance and the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, one question loomed larger than all the rest. In a world where it seemed like everyone was compromised, who could they really trust? With time running out and the stakes higher than ever, Reeves and Williams steeled themselves for the final confrontation. Little did they know, the most shocking revelations were yet to come, truths that would shake their beliefs to the core and force them to question everything they thought they knew about justice, duty, and the thin blue line. As chows reigned at the airfield, Reeves and Williams made a split-second decision. They couldn't let Martinez bleed out, but they also couldn't lose their only lead. "Go," Reeves shouted to Williams, applying pressure to Martinez's wound. "I got her. Don't let that jet get away." Williams hesitated for a moment, torn between helping his partner and chasing down their suspect. But there was no time to waste. He sprinted towards a nearby hangar, praying he'd find something, anything, that could help him give chase. As if answering his silent plea, Williams spotted a sleek helicopter, its rotors already spinning. A pilot was running pre-flight checks, clearly preparing for takeoff. Without a second thought, Williams flashed his badge. "FBI, I'm commandeering this chopper. It's a matter of national security." The pilot's eyes widened, but he quickly complied, sliding over to the co-pilot's seat as Williams climbed in. Within moments, they were airborne, in hot pursuit of the escaping jet. Back on the ground, Reeves struggled to keep Martinez conscious as sirens wailed in the distance. "Stay with me, Sarah," he pleaded. "Who did this? What did you mean it goes all the way to the top?" Martinez's eyes fluttered open, her voice barely a whisper. The operation. It's called Pandora's Box." She coughed, blood speckling her lips. "Reeves, you can't trust." But before she could finish, her eyes rolled back, and she fell unconscious. As paramedics swarmed the scene, Reeves found himself being pulled away by men in dark suits. "Officer Reeves," one said firmly, flashing a badge. "We need you to come with us. Now." Across town, Maria Hernandez was running for her life. After being discovered at the abandoned factory, she'd narrowly escaped, using every trick she'd learned at the academy to evade her pursuers. But she knew she couldn't run forever. Ducking into an alley, Maria pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She had to warn someone about what she'd overheard. But who could she trust? As she scrolled through her contacts, a shadow fell across her. Looking up, her heart sank. It was Officer O'Malley. "You've really stepped in it now, rookie," O'Malley said, his usual friendly demeanor replaced by something far more sinister. "But don't worry. We're going to have a nice, long chat about everything you think you know." Meanwhile, high above the city, Williams was locked in a high-stakes aerial pursuit. The jet was faster, but the helicopter was more maneuverable. As they weaved between skyscrapers, Williams realized they were heading towards the coast. Suddenly, his earpiece crackled to life. "Agent Williams," a stern voice said. "This is Deputy Director Collins. Stand down immediately. You're interfering with a classified operation." Williams' mind raced. This had to be connected to the text message about the safety deposit box. But could he trust his own superiors? Or was the corruption truly as far-reaching as Martinez had claimed? As he grappled with this dilemma, something caught his eye. The jet was descending towards what looked like a private island just off the coast. And there, waiting on a pristine beach, was a figure Williams recognized instantly: Mayor Donnelly. In that moment, all the pieces started to fall into place. The charity foundation, the late-night warehouse meetings, the federal agents at the airfield, it was all connected. But to what? Williams made his decision. "Sorry, sir," he replied to the deputy director, "but I need to see this through." With that, he switched off his communications and prepared to land on the island. Back in the city, Reeves found himself in a nondescript office building, facing a panel of stern-faced officials. "Officer Reeves," one began, "what you've stumbled into is a matter of national security. We need to know everything you've uncovered now." Reeves stood his ground. With all due respect, he said, I don't know who I can trust anymore. But I do know that good people are getting hurt, and I won't say a word until I understand what's really going on here. The room fell silent. Then, to Reeves' surprise, one of the officials smiled. Well, he said, I was hoping you'd say that. He pressed a button, and a hidden door slid open, revealing a room full of monitors and bustling analysts. Welcome, Officer Reeves, to Operation Pandora's Box. As Reeves stepped into the hidden command center, his mind reeling, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into the lion's den. Whatever secrets this operation held, he was about to be initiated into something that would change everything he thought he knew about law enforcement, justice, and the true nature of power. Little did he know, as Williams touched down on the island and Maria fought for her life across town, that the next few hours would bring revelations so shocking, so earth-shattering, that nothing would ever be the same again. The true purpose of Pandora's box was about to be revealed, and with it, a truth that would shake the foundations of society itself. As Reeves stepped into the hidden command center, a familiar face greeted him, Captain Sarah Martinez, alive and well. Sorry for the deception, James, she said, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and resolve. We had to be sure we could trust you. Across town, Maria Hernandez found herself face to face with Officer O'Malley in that dark alley. But just as he reached for her, a group of undercover agents emerged from the shadows. FBI. Hands where we can see them, O'Malley. The tables had turned. Meanwhile, on the island, Williams crouched behind a sand dune, watching Mayor Donnelly shake hands with Elena Vasquez as they disembarked from the jet. He inched closer, straining to hear their conversation. Is everything in place? Donnelly asked nervously. Vasquez nodded. Operation Pandora's box is ready. Once we upload the data, there's no going back. Every corrupt official, every dirty deal, it all comes to light. Williams froze. This wasn't what he expected at all. Back at the command center, Reeves learned the shocking truth. Pandora's box isn't about corruption, James, Martinez explained. It's about exposing it. We spent years compiling evidence, building an airtight case against a network of corruption that spans local police departments, city governments, and even reaches into federal agencies. The pieces started falling into place. The Bright Futures Foundation was a front, yes, but not for money laundering. It was a cover for gathering intelligence. The warehouse meetings were coordination between undercover agents. And Donnelly, far from being the head of the snake, was working with them to bring the whole system down. But why all the secrecy? The chases? The gunfire? Reeves asked, his head spinning. Because, Officer Reeves, a new voice said. He turned to see Elena Vasquez walking in, flanked by Williams and Donnelly. The corruption runs so deep that we couldn't trust traditional channels. We had to be absolutely certain about who was really on the side of justice. Williams stepped forward. The safety deposit box, the island, it was all a test. To see how far we go to uncover the truth. Reeves felt a mix of relief and frustration. So everything, our whole investigation, was just an elaborate setup. Not everything, Donnelly said grimly. The corruption we're about to expose is very real, and the danger. He paused, his face darkening. Let's just say not everyone on that list is going to go down quietly. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. An analyst shouted, Sir, we've got multiple breaches. Someone's trying to hack our secure servers. Vasquez rushed to a computer terminal. It started. They know we're onto them. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. We need to upload the Pandora's box files now, before they can stop us. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Reeves and Williams exchanged a look, years of distrust melting away in the face of a common enemy. What do you need us to do? Reeves asked. Martinez handed them each a secure tablet. These contain backup copies of everything. If our upload fails, you two are our last line of defense. Get these to the media, no matter what. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the building shook with the force of an explosion. They're here, Donnelly said, drawing a concealed weapon. As smoke began to fill the room, Reeves and Williams stood back to back, tablets clutched tightly. Years of training kicked in as they prepared to fight their way out if necessary. The fate of Pandora's box, and with it, the chance to expose corruption at the highest levels, rested in their hands. But even as gunfire erupted in the hallways outside, a final twist awaited them. A hidden door slid open, revealing a figure that made everyone freeze. "I'm afraid I can't let you do that," said a calm, familiar voice. Deputy Director Collins stepped into the room, flanked by heavily armed men. In that moment, as heroes and villains faced off with the fate of justice hanging in the balance, one thing became crystal clear. The true test of integrity, the real measure of what it means to uphold the law, was just beginning. And for Reeves and Williams, the most difficult choice of their careers lay ahead. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment palpable. The truth of Pandora's box was finally within reach, but at what cost? As sirens wailed in the distance and the smell of smoke filled the air, the stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine the future of law enforcement itself. The tension in the room was palpable as Deputy Director Collins surveyed the scene, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos around them. "I've been tracking Pandora's box for months," he said, his voice steady. "I had to be sure it wasn't just another power play." For a moment, no one moved. Then, to everyone's surprise, Collins lowered his weapon. "I'm here to help," he announced. "The corruption you've uncovered goes even deeper than you realize. We need to get that data out now." Relief washed over the room, but there was no time to celebrate. The building shook with another explosion, closer this time. "They're trying to destroy the servers," Vasquez shouted over the din. "We need to upload now." Reeves and Williams sprang into action, their earlier mistrust forgotten in the face of a common enemy. They worked in tandem, covering Vasquez as she raced to complete the upload. Martinez and Donnelly coordinated with Collins' team, setting up a defensive perimeter. As gunfire erupted in the hallway, Williams turned to Reeves. "Listen, about that night on the highway." Reeves cut him off with a shake of his head. "Water under the bridge. We got bigger problems now." Just then, the door burst open. O'Malley stormed in, gun raised, several corrupt officers at his back. "It's over," he snarled. "Step away from the computers." What happened next was a blur of motion. Reeves dove for cover, pulling Vasquez down with him. Williams and Martinez returned fire, while Collins and his team engaged the intruders. In the chaos, a stray bullet hit the main power supply, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows. Reeves crawled towards the server bank, determined to protect the data at all costs. He could hear Williams providing covering fire, the agent's voice steady despite the mayhem. "Upload at 85%, Vasquez called out. "We just need a few more minutes." But those minutes felt like an eternity. As the firefight raged around them, Reeves found himself face to face with O'Malley. The corrupt officer's gun was trained on Vasquez, his finger tightening on the trigger. Without hesitation, Reeves launched himself at O'Malley. They grappled in the semi-darkness, each fighting for control of the weapon. In the struggle, Reeves caught glimpses of the battle around him, Williams and Martinez working in perfect sync, Collins directing his team with precision. Suddenly, O'Malley's grip slackened. Reeves looked up to see Maria Hernandez standing over them, a fire extinguisher in her hands. "Thought you could use some backup," she said with a grim smile. As the last of the corrupt officers were subdued, a cheer went up from Vasquez. "Upload complete. Pandora's box is open." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Years of corruption, countless dirty deals and cover-ups, all lay bare for the world to see. It was a moment that would change everything. In the days that followed, the fallout from Pandora's box was seismic. News outlets worked around the clock to sift through the mountain of evidence. Arrests were made at every level of government and law enforcement. The public's trust had been shaken to its core, but for the first time in years, there was hope for real change. Reeves and Williams found themselves at the center of a media storm. Their journey from adversaries to allies captured the public's imagination, a symbol of what could be achieved when good people worked together. As the dust settled, the two men stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching as O'Malley and his co-conspirators were led away in handcuffs. "So," Williams said, breaking the silence. "What now?" Reeves sighed, the weight of the past few months heavy on his shoulders. "Now we rebuild. It won't be easy, but it's necessary." Williams nodded in agreement. "You know, when I first went undercover, I thought I knew what corruption looked like. But this was something else entirely." "It's easy to lose faith," Reeves admitted. To think the whole system is broken beyond repair. But then I look at officers like Maria, willing to risk everything to do what's right. It gives me hope. As if on cue, Martinez approached, flanked by Vasquez and Collins. "We got a proposition for you both," she said. "We're forming a new task force. Its mission, to continue the work of Pandora's box, to root out corruption wherever it hides." Reeves and Williams exchanged a look. After everything they'd been through, the choice was clear. In the months that followed, the task force worked tirelessly. It wasn't easy. For every corrupt official they brought down, another seemed to take their place. But slowly, surely, they began to make a difference. Reeves found himself mentoring a new generation of officers, instilling in them the values of integrity and justice that had been lost for so long. Williams, for his part, worked to rebuild trust between law enforcement and the communities they served. 1 year to the day after Pandora's box was opened, Reeves and Williams stood on that same highway where their journey had begun. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a fitting backdrop for reflection. "You know," Reeves said, breaking the comfortable silence, "a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be working alongside an FBI agent to clean up the force, I'd have laughed in their face." Williams chuckled. "And if someone had told me that a cop I thought was dirty would end up being one of the most honorable men I know, I'd have said they were crazy." They both laughed, the sound carrying across the empty highway. As the laughter faded, a more solemn mood settled over them. "We've come a long way," Reeves mused. "But there's still so much work to do." Williams nodded in agreement. "True. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're on the right path. Like maybe, just maybe, we can make a real difference." As they stood there, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon, both men felt a sense of purpose that had been missing for far too long. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with obstacles and setbacks, but they were ready to face it together. The story of the racist cop and the undercover agent had become something much larger, a testament to the power of integrity, the importance of looking beyond first impressions, and the potential for real change when good people refuse to look the other way. As night fell and the first stars appeared in the sky, Reeves and Williams got back in their car, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. They drove off into the darkness, not as enemies or even just colleagues, but as partners in the never-ending fight for justice. And somewhere out there, Pandora's box remained open, a constant reminder that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find its way to the light.